Hello, welcome to Brook Lane's Facebook Live presentation, How to Navigate Negative Thinking. I'm Kurt Miller, Community Relations and Education Manager at Brook Lane. For information on future programs, please visit brooklane.org. You will also find recordings of our Facebook Live programs on our YouTube channel, as well as videos on a variety of mental health topics. If you have any questions during the program today, please type them into the comments area and I will relay them to our speaker. Again, thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. Our thoughts and emotions and behaviors are linked. Therefore, our thoughts can greatly impact how we feel and how we act. We all engage in some negative thinking from time to time, yet if it gets out of hand and affects the way you feel about yourself or the world, or interferes with your work, your studies, or your everyday functioning, it can really lead to some pretty severe mental health challenges. Brook Lane therapist Rena Arnold is with us today to share how to manage these unhelpful thoughts. Rena Arnold is a licensed clinical social worker providing therapy for children, adolescents, and families. And this is at Brook Lane's North Village outpatient office in Hagerstown. She works with clients with a variety of mental health issues to teach positive coping skills, improve communication, and behavior modification. Rena has a master's degree in social work from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, with a clinical concentration, and holds a specialization in working with children and families. She's worked in the field of mental health care for over 20 years, with a range of experience, including therapeutic foster care, school-based therapy, and outpatient mental health services. Rena provides a variety of therapeutic interventions, including cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, as well as offers Christian-based counseling. Rena, welcome, and thank you for being here to share with us today.
Thank you, Kurt. So sorry for the delay, folks. I'm a little new at this, but thank you for joining us and being here with us this evening as we talk about navigating negative thinking. And before we get started, I just wanted to encourage you, if you can, to grab a piece of paper, something to write on, and something to write with. Not because I want to encourage you to take any sort of notes while we are going through our presentation, but I do have an activity for us to do at some point in the presentation. So if you can have something to write with and write on, it would be very helpful. Before we get started, I just want to engage us in a moment of mindfulness. If we can just take a deep breath in and hold it for a moment and just release the tensions from the day so that we can be prepared to be in this moment together. Because the moment that we're going to experience through this time together can be captured again when the video gets rewatched, but this actual moment is not going to happen again. So it's nice to just be prepared, to be mindful, to stay in the present tense, and to just absorb the opportunity and the information that we're going to be sharing today. So let's just take another deep breath through our nose and exhale the stress of today. Clearing our mind, getting ready to dive into this concept of navigating negative thinking. Okay, navigating negative thinking. This is a Brook Lane Health Services presentation. Negative thinking is a result of different life experiences, interactions with other people, and information that we are exposed to. Our brains has the capacity to organize and conceptualize information and turn those into thoughts. And those thoughts oftentimes lead us into certain actions or reactions or behaviors, as well as evoke certain emotions. When I experience negative thinking, oftentimes the emotion behind, or at least the emotion that's a result of that thinking, is an undesirable one. And sometimes I freeze and I'm not sure what to do next. So today we're going to talk about different ways of navigating that in hopes that it will be beneficial to the future. When we look at this picture, it brings to mind, this is a person carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And when we think about someone that we believe has been carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, oftentimes we associate that to burdens, that this person has a lot on their plate, a lot going on, stress overload, work overload, family overload, and it's just a heavy burden for them to be walking around carrying. One of the things I'm not sure that we truly take into consideration is the heaviest burdens that we carry are the thoughts in our heads. So this picture is a nice example of the different types of thoughts that we might have going on in our heads, the different type of language that we use to kind of organize our experiences and the information that we're receiving depending on our perception. So I wanted to read a poem, and I think that this author of this poem has captured negative thinking in a very coordinated way. So I want us to consider that some people oftentimes have this type of self-talk. The poem reads, "I'm very ugly, so don't try to convince me that I'm a very beautiful person, because at the end of the day, I hate myself in every single way. And I'm not going to lie to myself by saying there's beauty inside of me that matters, that I am a worthless, terrible person, and nothing you say will make me believe I still deserve love, because no matter what, I am not good enough to be loved, and I am in no position to believe that beauty does exist within me. Because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think, am I as ugly as people say?" It's a very unfortunate example of the way that some people speak to themselves. So I think that poem really captures this idea of the glass is half empty. Again, negative thinking is a result and a reflection of our interactions with people in the world around us, our experiences and information that we've been exposed to, and that causes us to draw different perceptions. Some people can look at the glass as half full. Some people can look at the glass as half empty. That poem exhibits the glass being half empty. There are different categories of negative thinking. And what we want to do is we want to be able to label these categories under the umbrella of cognitive distortions. Another word that is used for cognitive distortions could be cognitive errors or cognitive traps. And what I have here are some examples of different cognitive traps. And what we want to do today is we want to learn what these cognitive traps are. We want to be able to have a name for them so that when we are trying to navigate them, we kind of know what we're navigating against. So cognitive distortions are thinking styles that result in irrational and negative beliefs that lead to heightened anxiety, and they increase our stress. Example, all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is like looking at things with tunnel vision with no middle ground. Sometimes we might see this in different mental health conditions, such as obsessive compulsive disorder. An example might be, if I fall short of perfection, I am a total failure. That's an example of all or nothing thinking. And in these categories of cognitive distortions, many mental health conditions can be found in these categories as far as a symptom. So with depression, all or nothing thinking can exist in that. Anxiety, phobias. So these are very fluent and they overlap with one another. Emotional reasoning is believing that the way I feel reflects my reality. For example, I feel frightened right now. That must mean I'm in real physical danger. Catastrophizing is expecting the worst case scenario. I see this a lot with people who experience generalized anxiety. An example might be, I'm on a plane and the pilot said, we're in for turbulence. That means the plane's going to crash. That's catastrophizing. Overgeneralizing would be generalizing a negative experience to holding true for all experiences, such as, I didn't get hired for that job. That means I'll never get a job. Jumping to conclusions would be making an interpretation without actual evidence. See this a lot in social anxiety, along with some mind reading as well. An example might be, I'm in a room full of people and I'm drawing the conclusion that everyone in the room is judging me. The mental filter is focusing on the negatives while filtering out the positives. I made a note to myself here that that's going to be me after the presentation. I'm going to reflect on all the mistakes that I made in the presentation, and I'm going to have to activate my own process for navigating that negative thinking so that I don't stay there, so that I don't stay stuck there. Disqualifying the positive. Coming up with reasons why positive events don't count. This was the example. I didn't do well on the presentation, or I did do well on the presentation, and that was just dumb luck. Shoulds and should nots. Holding yourself to a strict list of what you should and shouldn't do and beating yourself up if you break any of these rules. Labeling. Labeling yourself based on mistakes and perceived shortcomings. It's very unfortunate. This happens a lot with people who have experienced bullying by peers. They tend to internalize these labels that their peers might place on them in the course of bullying, and they walk away believing these cognitive distortions. That's one of the things about negative thinking as it relates to the cognitive distortions here, is it can really set a person up for false fixed beliefs. And we can, if we stay here too long and we do not find a better way of thinking about how to interpret the world around us, we can really get stuck here. And these cognitive distortions can become absolute truths to us, oftentimes referred to as irrational beliefs. Okay, personalization. Assuming responsibility for things that are outside of my control. I see this a lot with kids who come into my office whose parents might be in conflict or in the course of separation or divorcing. Kids really internalize it and feel like it's their fault. For example, you know, it's my fault that my parents are divorcing. It's my fault that my parents were arguing. That is personalizing. And then we have mind reading and fortune telling. These are two that kind of go hand in hand. With mind reading, of course, I think that I can know what's going on in another person's head and what they're thinking. And fortune telling is, I believe that I know what's going to happen next. So one of the amazing attributes of our brain is this idea of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections as a response to learning. So what we see here is this strong pathway and then a weak pathway. This strong pathway, for our purposes right now, would represent negative thinking. When we experience a certain stressor, if our automatic response is to go into negative thinking, that is going to strengthen that pathway. But what research and biology tells us is that the brain has the capacity of unlearning and relearning new information. And it's just like with anything else that we want to learn, we need to put time and attention and repetition and practice into it. So over a course of time, by challenging and navigating negative thoughts and coming up with more constructive ways of thinking about things, we can begin to create a new pathway so that when we experience some of the same stressors or situations or interactions, our automatic pilot does not have to be only that negative thinking, but our automatic pilot can kind of go on manual and we can recognize what's going on. That's going to be the benefit of the label of the cognitive distortion, so that we know what to call it. We know what to call it, we realize what's going on, and then we can go into manual mode and we can choose a different path to start to form a stronger neural pathway. So in an effort to get ready for being able to purposefully navigate our negative thinking, here are some things that I would encourage us to do. To set our intention for the day, to meditate on our values, to engage morning self-care, to maintain a gratitude journal, and engage regular positive self-talk. So let me see if I can move this. I can't. Let's make it a habit each morning to get up and give ourselves a quiet opportunity to recognize that we are awake and to think positive thoughts. For example, wake up and tell myself, today I will be awake, alert, and attentive to the tasks at hand. We're setting our intention. Today I will fully and completely accept myself in all situations. Today, I will be kind to myself and be determined to experience gratitude, contentment, and satisfaction. Today is going to be a good day. I'm going to stay mindful of my mood and energy. And what I would encourage, again, because if we're going to build new neural pathways, we need to give attention and repetition and practice, is to come up with your own today statement or use one of these and stick with it for about 30 days. That every morning it's going to be the same intention that you're setting. Every morning you're going to wake up, eyes awake, and say to yourself, today I will fully and completely accept myself in all situations. And over a course of time, probably within a matter of about 2 weeks or so, you're going to automatically be waking up, and that's going to be the first thought that you have. So that's going to be really nice. I found this is a picture of my wall that is beside my door that leads outside. And this is an applique that I found at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. And when I saw it, I thought, I'm going to hang this or paste this on the wall beside my door. And every morning when me and my family go out the door, this is going to be a nice reminder, setting our intentions to be patient, to be gentle, to be humble, and to be loving to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. So doing things like putting little note cards up or specifically getting wall art or pictures that reinforce, positive thinking, reinforce our values, and hanging them around your house is going to be good exposure for being able to be mindful of what is my intention? What is it that I want to accomplish? What are the values? What are the things that are important to me? So speaking of values, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see all of them, but this is where the pen and paper comes into place. What I would like to do is to take a few minutes and ask you to identify 11 values, personal values. Personal values are qualities of character that are meaningful and vital to a sense of purpose for your life. Values are your heart's deepest desires and for how you want to behave as a human being. Values are not about what you want to get or achieve. They're about how you want to behave or act on an ongoing basis. So I just want to take a moment and ask you to identify 11, whether they're from this list or they're just values that you hold near and dear, because this is not an all-inclusive list. This is a really neat exercise that I recently did in a training that I went to. And as I was putting together information and realizing the importance of our values as it relates to navigating negative thinking, I thought this might be a really neat exercise to do with the audience. So it's going to take a few minutes, but I just want you to identify 11 values. And I could just tell you what the next phase of it is and just have you all do this on your own, but it would take away from the nature of the meaningfulness of the exercise. So 11 values. Now, once you get your 11 values, what I'm going to ask you to do is cross off 4 of them that you feel you can live without. Again, remembering values are your deepest desires for how you want to behave as a human being. Now, what you'll find is that this is very challenging to cross off 4, but if you really look at your list of values, some of them will probably overlap. such as if compassion is one of my values and caring is one of my values, I could probably get rid of one of them because the other one embodies the one that I'm getting rid of. So identify the 4 that you would take off of your list, and that should leave you with 7. And now that you have 7, I'm going to challenge you one more time to cross off 3. Cross off 3 more that you have left from your 7. And I initially thought, man, come up with 11 values. This is going to take a long time. But actually, to cross off 4 took longer than to come up with 7. And then to cross off 3 more took even longer. But what we're doing is we're trying to get to our 4 core values. Now, if I would have said, write down your 4 core values, you may or may not have ended up with the 4 that you have left in front of you right now. So this is kind of a process of elimination exercise to really get to those 4 core values, because I came up with 11, 4 I decided I could live without. Oh, 3 more is really hard to take off of the list. But once you take those other 3 off, you're left with your 4. So in the exercise that I did in the training, there was also, the next phase was to draw a shield. So in the ribbon of the shield, and we'll get to this part shortly, we're going to put our destination. This is going to be our why. And in each quadrant of the shield, we're going to put one value of our core 4. And then what I would encourage you to do, and this is all going to come into play as it relates to navigating, setting our course, determining the direction of how to navigate our negative thoughts. What I would challenge you to do is, after the presentation at some point, really take a look at those 4 core values and define them. Maybe do a little Google search, maybe find positive affirmations or scripture that support those values, so that it's not just a word. It's not just the word resiliency. It's defined by something. It's defined by the words that you've chosen to define it by. And again, remember, values are meant to drive our behavior, the behavior that we want to exhibit for ourselves, towards others, in the world around us. I hope that you all enjoyed that. Okay, so the next part, along with setting our intention, identifying our values, is engaging good self-care. Hydrate your brain first thing in the morning. Drink a couple ounces of water, 8 to 16 ounces of water, for optimal brain activity. Our brains are literally composed of 73% water. So being able to give our brains that boost is going to be very helpful in the morning. Also, try to find time to have 15 minutes of physical activity. We all know the benefits of physical activity, whether it's stretching, yoga, going for a brisk walk, just, doing some small weightlifting, whatever it might be. It's going to increase our awareness and alertness, give us a better mood, mindset, clear thinking, and it decreases a lot of health issues. Give attention to our hygiene. I try to encourage people very often, please, take your showers in the morning. If you're a shower person at night, splash water on your face, change your clothes, make sure you're brushing your teeth. This giving attention to hygiene is a transitional activity. You're suggesting to yourself, I'm getting ready to move in to beginning my day. Also, take your vitamins. Magnesium has a calming effect on the neural functions. Vitamin D is good for brain health, mood, and memory. And a multivitamin for overall nutritional balance is better for brain performance. Another thing to prepare ourselves in order to move into practicing how to navigate our negative thoughts is to maintain an attitude of gratitude. So gratitude is a voluntary decision. It's a willingness to experience and exhibit the appreciation and thankfulness of the things that we have in our life. So in order to form this habit, take a few minutes of time to spend on the things in your life that you are grateful for. Be able to receive and reciprocate compliments. Offer prayers of thankfulness and meditate on those, and keep a gratitude journal. Choosing Gratitude, Your Journey to Joy, is a book written by Nancy Lee DeMoss, and it's a very good read, and I would encourage folks to read that. Research has shown that keeping a gratitude journal for 1 month can reduce stress, improve your mood, and decrease anxiety. There's another book, actually I got that information out of Daniel G. Amen's book, Conquer Worry and Anxiety. And I just wanted to add these 2 books as a slide so that when people might want to visit this presentation later, you would have that information. These are 2 really good books with some very meaningful information in them. Also, the last part of our getting ready to navigate negative thoughts is engaging positive self-talk. So positive self-talk is about tapping into our internal dialogue. Positive self-talk is meant to motivate us, acknowledging truths, accept challenges, and build self-efficacy. Efficacy is the belief that we have an ability to accomplish something or to achieve something. So I oftentimes will encourage people to write, I am, I can, and I will statements. Now, the neat thing here is, 1, I am, and put a value in there. I am a resilient individual. What does that mean? What are you going to be able to do with that? Because I'm a resilient individual, I can maintain my contentment and my satisfaction. And I will embrace the blessings and challenges in this day. Another example is I'm worthy of good intentions. I can find the good in whatever today holds for me, and I will determine my direction today. I've encouraged people to get yourself a index card and write down what your I am, I can, and I will statements are, and carry that with you. So that if you find yourself in a difficult spot or up against an obstacle or stress, whatever it might be throughout the day, you can quickly pull that card out and remind yourself, I am resilient. I can maintain my contentment and satisfaction despite the situation or the stress or whatever's going on, and I will embrace the blessings and challenges in this day. It's a nice reminder. So I want you to finish this statement. This would be your goal statement. This would be determining your destination. I will navigate my negative thinking because I want to be able to. And then you put in there, what do you want to be able to do? So when we go back to the shield and there was that ribbon or that banner at the top of the shield, that's where this statement goes. This is your destination. Where are you trying to get? Realizing and accepting that you've been in a negative spot, that negative thinking has contributed to a disruption in your life. It's contributed to increased anxiety and stress and depression and just a lack of motivation. I'm tired of living that way. And so I want to navigate my negative thinking because I want to be able to, and then you finish that statement. Put that in the ribbon on your shield. But let's remember, the destination is less important than the journey. The destination tells us where we're going, but the journey is where we find the joy. It's not about finishing the activity, but it's about doing it. Along with a gratitude journal, I think just keeping a regular journal, it doesn't have to be daily, but to be able to have some narrative of this is where I started, and then be able to reflect on it 30 days later. Remember, for 30 days, use the same kind of mantra to set your intention. We're going to talk about how to establish a plan of action, right? This would be our course. So we use this moral compass to determine by our values what direction we want to go in. And then we use, for lack of a better way, a GPS to determine what's the route that we're going to take. What are the steps that we're going to take? And if we do this for 30 days, ideally, we're going to start feeling a little better. And it would be nice to be able to keep track of that and then go back and review, wow, this is where I started on, June 15th, and this is where I'm at July 15th. Setting a course. As with anything, if we are going to engage something consistently, if we are trying to make a change in our life, I think that it is most beneficial if we really develop an action plan. So identify the steps that you'll take towards your goal. Set a start date. Identify the frequency of how often you'll engage these actions, write down your action plan, and then reevaluate it regularly. You know, one of the things that I forgot to mention when we talk about positive self-talk is there's this very powerful exercise. It's called soul gazing, or sometimes it might be called eye gazing. Oftentimes it is done in couples counseling to develop some silent emotional intimacy. But one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to consider taking time in the morning and really looking at yourself in the mirror, not picking out your flaws and looking at your makeup and smiling at yourself and taking selfies, not that, but look in the mirror and stare at yourself in the eyes and make a connection with your inner person and remind your inner person of who you are, what you're capable of, and what you're going to do today. I am a resilient individual. No matter what today throws at me, I can bounce back. I will find the joy, the blessings, and the challenges in today's events. To be able to say that to yourself. If anyone has watched the movie The Help, it's kind of likened to when the nanny consistently tells a little girl, you are kind, you are good, you are important. That might not be exactly what she says, but it's along those lines. She's reinforcing a sense of self-esteem in that little girl. And we can do that for ourselves by this eye gazing. Okay, so how are we going to challenge negative thoughts? I think first we have to come into agreement that the thoughts that we have actually qualify as negative. If they are not bringing any joy or peace or contentment to my life, if they are causing an increase of anxiety or stress, then they're qualifying as negative. Once I've identified and I agreed with myself, I'm having negative thinking right now, if we can put them into a category of a cognitive trap, a cognitive distortion, I'm overgeneralizing right now. I know what that is. A lot of times when people experience negative thinking, again, they get caught up in it. Like, why am I thinking this way? Why do I always think this way? What's causing me to think this way? We can bypass that whole process. We can take power away from the cognitive distortions by just giving them a label. I am negatively thinking right now. I'm stressing myself out. I am overgeneralizing. Now, can I give myself permission to acknowledge the presence of the negativity? Can I give myself permission that it is okay for me to be having this type of thought? Because again, it's kind of like being in a power struggle or a tug of war. I'm dropping the rope. At the point that I've engaged in the power struggle and I realize, oh, wait a minute, this is overgeneralizing. I know what I'm doing right now. If I can give myself permission and invite in and allow that negative thought to exist, then I'm taking the power away from it. Then I'm engaged in the moment of realizing what I'm experiencing. And then to be able to ask myself, is there another way of thinking about this situation? I've acknowledged the negative thought. I don't need to know why it's there, what caused it. All I need to know is that it's there and label it. I'm catastrophizing right now, thinking worst case scenario. So there's a difference between rational and irrational thinking. And oftentimes we will encourage people to recognize that the negative thoughts are irrational and to try to find the evidence to support the negative thought. Now, what I have found is that if people really want to dig their heels in, they will find the evidence to support their negative thinking. So I have found that it is more beneficial for people to be able to determine, is my thought irrational or is it plausible? If it's irrational, it automatically is disqualified. So for example, anyone who knows me well knows that I love the ocean, but they also know that I am obsessed with sharks. And one of my negative thinking traps has been catastrophizing, believing worst case scenario, I go in the ocean, I'm not going to enjoy myself, I'm disqualifying the positive already, and I have this fear of sharks going to come up and get me. Is that irrational or is it plausible? Well, I can't, no one can assure me that that's not going to happen. So it is plausible, but is it likely? Is it even statistically likely? So that's a question we want to ask ourselves. Now, if I'm at my friend's house and I refuse to get into the deep end of the pool because I'm afraid that I'm going to get bit by a shark, that's absolutely irrational. There is no evidence to support that a shark could even be in a chlorine pool, right? And so to be able to, once I've recognized the thought that I'm having is increasing stress, it's increasing my anxiety, it's undesirable, I'm uncomfortable and stressed out by it, it's negative. I'm negative thinking. What kind of negative thinking is it? What's the cognitive trap? Can I give it permission to exist, give myself permission that it's okay that it exists, and realize it's only one way of thinking about whatever the situation, person, idea, memory, experience is. Determine, is it plausible or is it irrational? If it's irrational, automatically disqualified, not giving it any more attention, realizing it's irrational. Now, if it's plausible, then I need to take into consideration. Just because it's plausible doesn't mean that it's true. Just because it's plausible doesn't mean that it's really going to happen. And so I want to find the evidence. I'm not looking for the evidence that makes the cognitive distortion plausible. What I'm looking for is the evidence that makes the plausibility of the cognitive distortion not likely. It's not likely to happen. I can't promise that it's not going to happen. I can't promise that I'll get in the ocean and I will fall into the statistic of, someone getting bit by a shark. I mean, statistically, you're more likely to get struck by lightning, from what I understand, than to be bit by a shark, right? But I can find the evidence to support that it's not statistically likely by remembering things like I'm not afraid to go out into a thunderstorm, or, I'm not concerned that I'm going to get struck by lightning. So if it's less likely that I would get bit by the shark, why would I be more concerned about, the thunderstorm? So if it's plausible, then to be able to find a way to give the plausibility a benefit of a doubt, to determine what the benefit of the doubt of that not likely plausibility statement might be. So a benefit of a doubt is to have a favorable judgment in the absence of full evidence, and then to also be able to engage the power of gratitude. So gratitude, to identify it as an emotion and to use the choice to be thankful, to approach life with an attitude of appreciation. So is it plausible that I could get bit by a shark? Yes. Is it likely? No. The benefit of the doubt applies. And I'm going to lean into the favorable judgment in the absence of the full evidence. And I'm going to find reasons to be grateful for the opportunity that I have. So feeling trapped, this idea of cognitive distortions also being cognitive traps, feeling trapped occurs when where you want to be is not immediately accessible from where you are. And the solution to feeling trapped is to focus on the current moment and to ask yourself, what can I do right now that will bring me closer to where I want to be? Okay, so remember, cognitive distortions oftentimes are referred to as cognitive traps. And if we stay there too long, we can get stuck and we can start to believe that these irrational beliefs and negative thoughts are absolute truths. And then we can feel trapped, just like this leaf is on the fence. So what we want to learn to do is to be able to engage psychological flexibility. This is really where our values come into play. And I'm not going to be able to read all the information, but what's coming up on the slide here is a way to really think about how to engage psychological flexibility. Given a distinction between me and the thoughts that I am experiencing in this moment, am I willing to accept those thoughts fully and without defense, as those thoughts are and not as I believe they are? And use what is meaningful and vital in my life to take me in a different direction at this time and in this situation, because behavior happens in the now. So in other words, identify negative thinking, categorize it, give myself permission for it. I can give myself permission for it because mindfully I can recognize this is just a feeling that I'm having in this moment, and this moment is temporary. It's not permanent. It's not going to last. So I can give myself permission for having this thought. I can accept this thought as existing without being defensive or combative towards it. It's not about wanting to push it away and pretend like it doesn't exist. It's about wanting to lean into it. Why should I want to lean into it? Because I can use my values, because that's who I am. And my values drive and motivate me towards wanting to live a healthier life, towards wanting to behave in a new way. And at this time in this situation, I'm going to make the choice to do that, because behavior doesn't happen 5 minutes from this situation. Behavior happens now. And I can do that. And by being able to make that commitment and accepting the reality of what it is that I'm experiencing, I'm engaging psychological flexibility. This comes from the acceptance and commitment therapy model. And what acceptance and commitment therapy does is it merges cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy with the mindfulness component to change the way that I'm thinking, which is going to affect the way that I'm feeling and even behaving in certain situations. And I'm going to feel confident in being able to do that, because I can realize that my emotions and the experience that I'm having is just in this moment. And I am not this moment. I'm just in this moment. This is self as context. And because I know what my values are and I know where my strength and my resiliency lie, I'm going to lean in to using my values, and I'm going to determine to take a different direction, to handle the situation, whatever it is, differently. I'm going to develop a new neural pathway intentionally, because behavior happens now. And in spite of the fact that I might find myself in a similar situation, hours, days, or weeks, the situation that I'm in right now will only happen now. So just as a reminder, a negative mind will never give you a positive life. And being positive doesn't mean that you never have negative thoughts. It just means that you do not let those thoughts control your life. Remember the poem that I read earlier, and we talked about the author really captured that poem as the glass is half empty. The neat thing about this poem is that if I read it differently, it gives a whole different perspective. So let's read it from the bottom up. Am I as ugly as people say? Because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think beauty does exist in me. And I am in no position to believe that I am not good enough to be loved, because no matter what, I still deserve love. And nothing you say will make me believe that I am a worthless, terrible person. So rest assured, I will remind myself there's beauty inside of me that matters. And I'm not going to lie to myself by saying I hate myself in every way. Because at the end of the day, I am a very beautiful person. So don't try to convince me that I am very ugly. You will never speak to anyone more than you speak to yourself in your head. So be kind to yourself. This concludes our presentation. I appreciate the audience that we have had. I appreciate the opportunity of being able to represent Brook Lane in this training, and I hope that it was fruitful and beneficial to those who have participated.
Thank you so very much, Rena. I really appreciate it and love the information that you shared and the examples and the exercise. I think it was very thought-provoking. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Kurt.
And we had no questions, so we will end now. And thank you for being here. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Kurt.